Welcome to the Purpose and Profit podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Varol. On the Purpose and Profit podcast, I interview business leaders who are ushering in a new era of mindful capitalism, while at the same time attracting the best talent, increasing brand loyalty, and bringing meaning into the workplace. These business leaders are proving that creating a purpose beyond profit is just good business. Today's guest is Rania Hoteit, a multi-award-winning serial entrepreneur and global impact leader. As the founder and former CEO of ID4A Technologies, Rania built a global company that is committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. ID4A Technologies has been revolutionizing the manufacturing process while creating significant environmental, economic, and social impact. Under Rania's leadership, ID4A was awarded many different recognitions, including recognized by the White House Office of Science and Technology for fostering the development of advanced manufacturing in the US and the world, and by the US Chamber of Commerce, receiving their 2021 Citizens Award for Best Economic Opportunity and Empowerment Program. In this episode, among other things, we discuss the importance of diversity at the highest level of an organization, the missing narrative of the positive impact artificial intelligence can have on employment, why modern-day slavery persists in global supply chains, and the role of dignity and accountability in leadership. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Rania, thank you so much for joining me today. You've received incredible recognition for ID4A Technologies and have made significant social, economic, and environmental impact. I'd like to share a few of the statistics here and find out how you were able to accomplish them. I'm going to read a list of these impacts since the collective impact is really incredible. And then I'd love it if you could share how you accomplished each of these. So here goes. You are credited with influencing over 1,900 businesses to adopt sustainable practices. You helped create industrial sector employment for around 320,000 workers. You helped 106,000 women earn steady, decent employment and empowered about 4,000 women to enter leadership roles. You also helped 72,000 minorities gain improved employment opportunities. You provided secure working environments for close to 1 million people. And finally, you've contributed to reducing labor exploitation in global production pipelines by improving the skills and working conditions for nearly 2 million people. Those numbers are incredible. Can you please share how ID4A Technologies was able to accomplish these things?
First, thank you so much, Kathy, for having me on the show. I'll give you a quick overview about what ID4A Technologies does. We are a global technology company that focuses on the customization and development of automation technologies that leverage AI and robotics and other exponential technologies to increase efficiency and scalability and flexibility across manufacturing cycles. But we were also able to integrate very impactful and strategic steps through our commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals in order to achieve the impact that we wanted to achieve. And in those areas are the Sustainable Development Goals 5, 8, 9, 10, and 12. And I'd be happy to go into more details to explain how we were able to target each one of those goals and create impact across these different areas.
And can you share what those numbers correlate to for the listeners that aren't as familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals and what 5 is or 12 is?
So the first area that we wanted to create impact in is the SDG 5, which is gender equality. As part of our initiatives to reduce inequality and close the gender gap, we have invested in empowering women to fulfill leadership roles within our own company. But also we were able to achieve that by collaborating with our customers and other organizations that we support. And in that process, we track the number of women who are hired, who are trained, who are promoted in different management positions. And through mid of 2022, we were able to empower about 3,700 plus women who were able to fulfill leadership roles because of our initiatives and the products and services that we were implementing with our customers. Within that particular category of gender equality as well, as part of our initiatives to close the gender gap internally, we implemented strategies to ensure equality within our teams. And we also invest in the recruitment and the training of women to fulfill roles across the entire organization, especially when it comes to management, when it comes to AI engineering and programming positions where women are widely underrepresented. When we work with customers, as we automate their processes and we optimize their operations, we're also helping them to increase the productivity and create more job opportunities. And within that process as well, we support them in the upskilling and training of their workforce as they move into new roles. This is how we've been able to create tremendous impact when it comes to workers' rights and when it comes to the quality of employment. So many workers have been able to earn steady and decent and safe employment. And we track the number, again, of women who get hired and the duration of employment and the positions that they hold. And up to now, we have about 107,000 women who have earned steady and decent employment as a result of the products and services that we implement with our customers, as well as the impact initiatives that we have created internally and in partnership with other organizations. So this is really how we've been able to achieve the impact when it comes to gender equality.
Are there any, with the training and upskilling programs you put in place to create this impact, are there lessons you learned that would be beneficial for other organizations that are struggling to reach gender equality within their company?
Absolutely. Within organizations, I think what we've learned is that one of the challenging aspects is really being able to break through the stereotypes that are built at a leadership level. When you enter an organization or when you look at an organizational structure and you realize that from the top down, there is no sense of equality, there's no diversity within that team, you don't see people being represented at the top level, it gives you a sense of the gaps that might exist from the top down, where there will be a lot of gaps related to gender equality, to creating opportunities for women, to having more opportunities available to women to go into leadership roles. So if you see majority of men being on the board and majority of men leading the company, I've learned from experience that it's most likely that that culture kind of trickles down into the organization, and it's so much harder to implement any type of gender equality initiatives or strategies to level the field for women within that organization.
I think that's such a important point. And as you were talking, I was thinking about how the dynamics within a family and how children model what their parents do. You learn what's acceptable within your family, what the norms are by looking as a child, looking at your parents. And within a business or an organization, the authority figures are those on the board, those in the C-suite, and employees learn what is required to be successful by looking at those leaders. And if those leaders represent just a certain population, it does send a very clear message that in order to get to that place, you have to be like them. And so by having that environment where you don't have diversity at senior levels, it really does reinforce unconscious bias internally of what an individual can accomplish within that organization, and also who you're going to be promoting if you are a leader within the organization, because that's what's expected almost without it being said explicitly.
That's exactly how it goes.
Well, thank you for sharing some lessons there. Now, I'd love to hear how you accomplish some of those other things with ID4A Technologies.
Sure. The next sustainable development goal that we focused on and we committed to was the SDG number 8, which is decent jobs and economic growth. And this is such an important part of the impact initiatives that we have internally created. Again, as we transform customers' operations and we automate their processes, we have been helping them to improve the quality and the safety in the manufacturing environment to ensure that all the necessary steps are included, from maintaining routines to risk assessments to functional operations to emergency responses to employees training to lockout and tag out procedures and safety inspections of all automation equipments, all the way to custom machines and software updates. And we work in very complex environments and we implement very complex deep tech solutions. So in that process, we are able to track the number of workers that are removed from dangerous environments. We are able to track the cost reduction in injuries, on fatalities, on illnesses and waste. And we can also track the increase in productivity through the safety and efficiency measures that we're able to implement. All these different metrics, they help us to evaluate the overall impact of our systems on the work environment. And that's how we were able to achieve that 900,000 plus impact on individuals who are able to work in improved, safe, and secure working environments as a result of our initiatives and the products and services that we are implementing. And within that category as well of decent jobs and economic growth, part of our mission is when we partner with customers or monitoring agencies, we also monitor with MPOs and with NGOs. And as part of those partnerships, our aim is to eradicate the exploitation of labor in global production pipelines. And it's a very, very tough target because there is so much stigma, and there's so many hidden strategies and tactics that go behind the scenes in production and in manufacturing plants. For us, we track the number of children, we track the number of abused workers and victims of forced labor. We also track any non-compliance with legally mandated wages and ages and bonuses and benefits. We also track any excessive and forced overtime and any health and safety issues to eliminate those violations of core labor rights and to improve factories' management compliance with codes of conduct under international labor standards. This area particularly is very close to my heart personally, but it's been also one of the most challenging areas for us to work in. In our process, we track the number of victims and children who are either saved or removed from exploitative conditions. And cumulatively, we've been able to so far impact nearly 2 million people, exactly about 1,751,000 plus individuals so far have been saved from modern slavery, from human trafficking, and child labor as a result of these efforts. And this is one of the areas, again, that's so close to my heart. And it's amazing to see how we were able to achieve these numbers over the last decade, given how difficult it is to make changes at that particular level.
That is really incredible. And it's such a difficult problem to address across supply chains. So modern day slavery is often the term that is used for a section of that. So forced labor within supply chains. And it's still very prevalent. And it's hard for companies that sell goods, brands that sell goods, to track it, get rid of it, because their supply chain is made up of so many other companies that they don't necessarily have clear visibility into. And so it becomes very difficult to identify when it's happening sometimes. And so what I find really interesting in your approach and in your response of how you were identifying modern day slavery and also other exploitive practices is really leveraging artificial intelligence, AI. And I think That's interesting for a number of reasons. One, if created right, AI could be eyes on the ground at all times, which is something that currently makes it very difficult to identify these issues, is not having eyes on the ground all the time. And number two is oftentimes, usually the conversation around AI within the labor market is that it damages employment, is that it has a negative impact. And so it's interesting hearing a different perspective of how it can actually be leveraged to protect workers, to create better working conditions, to create systemic change. I think that's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And I've spoken about this for so long, and we'll probably get into it as I speak about other sustainable development goals that we've been committed to as well. But this particular area of implementing technology has been so highly misunderstood by the public. Because, like you said, there's this misconception about technology, robotics, AI means loss of employment and loss of jobs and displacement and all these negative connotations, which are based in nothing but myth and fears that people have been just submitting to without really fact checking. Because if we really look at history, technology have never ever contributed to mass unemployment. And the way that we leverage technology is we are able to give the companies what they need and remove their incentives to exploit workers to achieve those goals, which is making profit by exploiting workers or increasing profit by exploiting workers in certain areas. So we're giving them the solutions that can help them be more productive and to be able to increase their profits because they're increasing their efficiency and their productivity through the implementation of technology. And with that, they're not only increasing their profits, they're able to reinvest and they're able to create more jobs as they grow and as they scale as businesses. So we see that through the work that we do, and we're always trying our best to educate the public on debunking these myths and telling them, no, look, we were able to achieve the opposite of what you think will happen by implementing technology. So again, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about these topics, because we want to make sure that more and more people understand how things actually work and the benefits of implementing technologies like AI and other exponential technologies, and eliminate that fear factor or reduce it as much as we can so we can make them see a possibility for a better future that can be achieved through the implementation of technology, not the opposite.
I think it's just an important conversation to add nuance to the discussion of, we all have a habit of putting things in black and white, and debates in black and white, and actions in black and white. But most of life is not black and white. Most of it has nuance, and it is based on intention. It's based on impact. And so I think that also highlights the importance of different voices and perspectives in every discussion to say, okay, this is the fear there is. All right, let's look at what that is. Let's be aware about what the fear is that jobs will go away. How can we actually use technology to do the opposite, to create more jobs, to make sure that they're safer, and be intentional about that and how we use it and track it along the way so we know that we're making progress. I think that's incredibly important. And I wanted to circle back to one other thing you said, just for the listeners to understand the incentive or motivation for modern day slavery and current supply chains. So think about the goods that you buy. A lot of them are incredibly cheap. The amount you have to spend for X good is not a lot. You could say a t-shirt, you could say a travel cup, whatever it is. If in the supply chain you aren't giving fair or living wages, you're cutting out a big cost of operations. And so if you're competing just on who can make this for the lowest cost, it can end up being, without technology coming into play, it can end up being who can pay their workers least, who can invest in the working environment the least, spend the least amount in it so that they can save money and actually make a profit. So you can end up having this downward spiral when incentives are aligned in the wrong way, or when you're looking at the problem without zooming out to see what are different solutions to get to a better outcome. And so I think it's really important how you're phrasing artificial intelligence and the impact you've been able to see through supply chains by using it in a different way.
100%. And that leads me into going back to talk about the other area of impact that we've been able to really influence, which is the Sustainable Development Goal number 9, and that is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. This is really our core entry point into being able to influence all these other areas and create impact across all the other different goals. As we help businesses transform their manufacturing processes to increase their productivity, we track the numbers of workers that have been able to gain employment due to increase of productivity and demand that resulted from implementing automation technologies and AI and robotics and other exponential technologies that we implement as well. In that process, we also track the number of workers that have been moved into new roles, so we can see the adaptability rate and also identify other gaps. And that's how we were able to help over 319,000 individuals gain employment in industrial sectors as a result of our products and services and as a result of the impact initiatives that we have to target this particular area. The next goal is number 10, and that is reduced inequalities. Again, as we automate processes and we optimize our customers' operations, we support them in the upskilling and training of existing workers and incoming employees as they move into new roles that require more specialized skills or higher skills due to automation and due to the integration of new technologies. And in that sense, we partner with suppliers, we partner with affiliates to provide the necessary programming for the training process. And that's how we were able to improve employment opportunities and increase wages for many individuals who would otherwise remain at a disadvantage or become displaced due to the lack of skill. This type of focus that we've had is particularly impactful on minority groups and underserved communities. And in that process, we track the number of employees who have been trained, the number of new jobs that have been opened, the number of workers that have been replaced, any changes or increases in wages, for example. And that's how we gain an understanding or a much more accurate metrics on the overall impact that we're able to create on the individual's economic well-being. And as a result of that, that's how we were able to impact close to 72,000 individuals of minority groups who have found improved employment opportunities as a result of these efforts. And the last area that I want to talk about is the Sustainable Development Goal number 12. And that is more related to the environment. That's about responsible consumption and production. And the way we achieve that is, again, as we automate processes and we optimize operations, we are minimizing the negative environmental impacts by conserving energy and resources, by helping customers reduce waste and harmful emissions, by increasing cost effectiveness and improving efficiency and incorporating sustainable manufacturing materials and recycling processes and production, which altogether also enhances the workers' safety and health. And we are able to track these metrics to evaluate the overall positive impact and efficiencies that our systems and services and products create to our customers. And that's how we were able to impact over 1,900 companies so far that have adopted sustainable practices and integrated information into their reporting cycles as a result of implementing our technologies and also partnering up with us on collecting all this data and monitoring all this data. And that really gives you a very clear overview about how we were able to achieve these numbers over the last decades through having very particular focus and very particular strategies that we were able to implement to reach these results.
That's incredible. And what a great case study ID4A Technologies is for other manufacturers of what can be implemented within their organizations, within their supply chains to really make an impact on the people working there, the employees, to make an impact on the environment and how they're actually tracking and improving environmental impact. So kudos to you with all of the work that you've been able to do. Now, I'm curious, where did your awareness that business could change lives and still be profitable come from? As you started ID4A Technologies, it seems like impact was a big piece of what you wanted to do. Can you share your intention and how you came to that outcome?
Sure. First of all, the awareness that business could change lives and still be profitable is something that I've thought about for a long, long time. I can't even give you an exact date, but I was very young when I started to develop social awareness, and I lived in Lebanon. This is where I grew up, and I grew up during the Civil War, and there was so much chaos during my upbringing that made me mature at a very young age and have this global perspective about what's going on in the world and what can be done to make life better. So my awareness developed early in terms of how can I make change. And then eventually when I became an entrepreneur later on, the first thing that came to my mind, I want to create something so impactful. I want to be able to be innovative and I want to be able to create innovative solutions, but I want to also find ways to capitalize on opportunities where impact can be created and where we could do more. From a leadership perspective, I always believe that companies can be powerful platforms for social change, and leaders have a responsibility to look beyond profit to make positive impact on the world. And that has been my mindset from the beginning. It was important for me that ID4A Technologies would create measurable impact at various levels because I think and I believe, and it's totally validated and it's a reality that technology plays a critical role in making this progress, especially in today's globalized economy. And I made that part of my mission as an entrepreneur, as an executive, as a leader, to not only share my vision for the future of work and how technology can be leveraged to create more equitable organizations and more sustainable operations and production. I really wanted to integrate other strategies where we could address important issues like labor exploitation and global production pipelines and help to eliminate, like I mentioned earlier, how can we eliminate the company's incentives to exploit workers by implementing cutting edge automation technologies and by guiding those businesses with practical steps to reduce their costs, increase their profits, and provide jobs without compromising the human dignity or sacrificing millions of lives. And through this collaborative process that we were able to create, we've been able to empower disadvantaged people. We've been able to reduce inequalities by supporting our manufacturing clients to not only enhance their operations and make the profits, but also create and provide decent employment opportunities and create safer work environments and give them the opportunity to increase their profits and productivity to the level where they're able to reinvest in upskilling and training their own workforce as they move into new jobs. So it really started with a big vision and with a desire to do something impactful and really breaking that down into practical strategies and negotiation strategies in order to be able to really convince our partners to go with us on that journey and not only be focused on implementing technology for the sake of becoming more efficient and more productive and more scalable and selling more and making more money, but also taking all the advantages that technology can give to any business and look at opportunities where we can leverage the growth into areas of impact. And that's really how the vision transcended into practical implementations and strategies in business later on.
Oh, there's two things you said I want to pull out. One was you said something to the effect of not damaging dignity. And I think that's a really important piece. I think it's an important piece for the workers who are in companies and not infringing on their dignity based on what's being asked of them, based on the conditions they're in, etc. But I also think it's not compromising the dignity of the leaders as well. Because anytime you are in a position of authority, if you infringe on someone else's dignity, you're taking yours away at the same time, and probably even in more measure. So there's that moral leadership as well of doing things in the way that are aligned with what you want to see in the world, that are aligned with who you are, and that hold everyone as people deserving of dignity through the process.
100%. And again, that's why leadership is so important. When you look at the character of a leader, you can really get a sense of what type of actions they are willing to take. And you can get a sense of the moral standards that they follow or the lack of moral standards. Mm-hmm. And that's why character and leadership is so important. The result of anything that you see happening. So we're talking about infringing on humans' dignity within a workplace environment. If this is happening, and there are so many, we're talking about millions of people who are being subjected to that. It's no coincidence. This is a consequence of somebody's decision to actually exploit people, to actually infringe on other people's human dignity. It's not by coincidence. It's not by accident. We don't get to this place just because we live in a poor country or because there are particular circumstances where there is lack of monitoring or lack of enforcement of the law. But we are looking at very corrupt characters that are leading those organizations, and they are responsible for the consequences that we are seeing on the ground. So again, what you said is very accurate, and that's why it's always critical to look at the characters of the individuals that are leading organizations and companies, because that would give us all the clues to what's going to happen next and what kind of impact that they're going to create, whether that's positive or negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where accountability is so important. And we are accountable for how we show up every day in our life, in our work, but we're also accountable for the environment we create if we are a leader for other people to show up into. And what I think is really important is it seems like only more recently in business, there's become a push for an acceptance of accountability across someone's supply chain. So it's not even just your company, but it's who you're giving business to that's helping you do whatever it is you do. And really being accountable to do your due diligence, to look into how do they operate their business and how do they treat their workers and what is their impact on the environment. And I think that's such an important shifting point in how business is being run and how accountability is being viewed.
True. And that's why when we talk about partnerships and alliances, you either create a partnership that's conducive to positive impact and positive change, or you create a partnership in crime. So you decide. If I go into a company, and that's kind of at the core of the work that we do, is when we go into a company and we do our assessment and we look at how they're operating and how their workers are, where are they working, what kind of environment they're in, how they're operating, what's their impact on the environment. We're doing all these assessments at once, not only so we know how we're going to go about reinventing their whole production process and their whole operation, but also how we're going to make sure that we can eliminate and adjust and create change across the entire organization. Because our aim is to be a partner in positive change. Our aim is not to be a partner in crime where we go in, yeah, we just want to make profit by being your partner. We sell you our technologies and we help you implement them and we train you to use them. But we will turn a blind eye that while you're also making your profit and you're having this amazing setup, you're still not treating your workers in the right ways. And there are still exploitation strategies being implemented, and workers are in places where they're not supposed to. So we refuse to go into alliances where we are partnering in crime. And if we can influence our partners to go with us all the way to make all these positive changes, this is for us where we feel that we fulfilled our mission in creating profit while being purposeful as a business.
You know, one phrase you used, I have never heard in this context before, but I think it's really powerful, which is partnering in crime. And what it made me think of was, if someone doesn't take accountability and you see something that is happening, then you become an accomplice to that. So remaining silent means you approve of it, you agree with it, you're not doing anything to stop it. And I think that that phrasing is really powerful. So I'd like to pivot just a little bit and dive into ID4A Technologies more, and specifically the company culture. As you were building the company, what was important to you from a culture standpoint in shaping the culture?
It was important for me to create a culture of innovation and purpose, and to set a leadership example of equity, of diversity, and inclusivity by creating a diverse executive team that would represent the diversity we have within our global team as well. We had over 340 employees by the time we got acquired mid this year. And we have teams distributed across 11 cities around the world. So we have a very diverse team in terms of countries and cultures and religions and races. So it was very, very important for us to make sure that we are setting an example for ourselves internally, but also for other organizations to follow. And we created that culture this way, where we want to make sure that the leadership reflects the level of diversity that we have across the board. Those are the top areas for me of importance: is culture of innovation and purpose, and setting the leadership example through having a diverse executive team that can represent everyone within the company, and also for everyone outside to know that we are going to walk the talk when we talk about those particular issues. And that's how we, for example, like at the executive leadership level, to give you an idea about how we were able to create that as well within our organization, we had about 18 top level management individuals. Those managers were split between 41 to 50% women. Of those managers, we also had between 41 to 50% of members who are of different racial and ethnic groups. So we were able to maintain that nearly 50% across the board, from the advisory board members and the board of directors. Same thing, we were able to maintain close to a 50% women that are on our boards. And as well, within that percentage, about 51 to 60% of those members also identify as members of a racial or ethnic group that's historically underrepresented. So we were able to look at all these different areas and try to achieve that level of equity and that representation internally, especially that we also work with companies and clients in between 29 to 30 countries across 3 different continents. So there's a lot of nuances to that because we are operating globally, because we have global team from different cultures and countries. And again, there's no better representation of what your culture is as a company than to look at your leadership team and see how that reflects your values and how that reflects your morals and how that reflects your ideals as an organization.
Those percentages are very not the norm when you look at leadership teams. So I'm curious, did you have a hard time creating that balance, recruiting for a diverse array, or was it easy, or did you have different strategies you put in place that other organizations could learn from?
Yes, it wasn't easy at all. It was a very conscious process of reaching that percentage because when I started, I was a sole founder and then I had a co-founder for a short period of time. And then I was alone again. And there was so many changes in the early stages of the company's foundation. And it was a process because as we grew as a company globally, our needs changed for increased representation within the company. So everything scaled over time. Everything was worked on over time. It wasn't easy, but we just had the vision from the beginning that the goal is to be able to achieve that. So, as we were scaling our teams, as we were diversifying our types of clientele and the regions that we were targeting, we were starting to mold and shift and craft these percentages internally. It didn't happen overnight because we also have the issue of skill and specialty. And it's not always easy to find women that are in particular areas of engineering and of technology. So we had to do a lot of work ourselves in terms of also training and in terms of bringing in talent and making sure that we can run programs to enable more females to join us. So there was a lot of work that we had to do over time. But one of the most critical aspects that have been greatly influential for our organization was creating internal training programs for external talents. So bringing in people that were not necessarily initially hired for the company, but we identified them as potential talents, but they just needed to be more equipped to join us in terms of skill. And we invested in those individuals. We invested in young female students and young graduates that had so much potential, but they didn't necessarily have the higher level skills that we really, really needed. So we had to invest into training them. That's how we were also able to achieve those goals and close the gap across the organization when it comes to the gender gap and other areas of diversity and inclusion as well.
Thank you for sharing that journey. I think it's important to note that it wasn't easy, but it was something that you as a CEO, as a leader, valued. And because you valued it, you figured out how to do it. It was a priority. And I think that's important for all leaders. If you value something and you prioritize it, you're going to figure out how to do it. And if you don't value it or don't prioritize it, it shows in how your organization looks. What you value is what shows up. So I think that's a really important piece. Now, you mentioned earlier that recently ID4A was acquired and you stepped down as CEO. Was this always part of the plan?
Yes, it was. It was always the plan for me that in general, if we speak about business, every business needs to have an exit strategy. So that's a general rule. But for us, particularly, the plan was based on a personal vision. I always wanted to be able to take something from scratch, from zero to the finish line, to the end. So the acquisition was something that's been in the works for the last 2 years. It was a bit slowed down with the pandemic situation and everything, but the aim was always to be able to scale a high growth, high impact company and get acquired by the 10th or 11th year mark. And it just happened. It just happened because there was a plan to do it. And also, it's part of my personal plan to evolve in my career. I also wanted to be able to reach a particular place where I could move beyond leading this particular company or the companies before and just transcend as a human being as well, where I could just take my expertise and keep moving forward with new ideas and also help other organizations learn from what I was able to learn and develop and implement over the years. And that's how things happened.
That's great. Now, what's next for you?
I don't like to share goals, honestly. I love to show up with results, so I will keep that to myself. But I would say that at the moment, after the acquisition has been finalized, right now I'm personally in a transition within the company. So I'm holding the chairman position of the board of directors. But I'm also at a place where I've been able to dedicate a lot of my time to support so many other organizations around the world that are either accelerators or other types of programs that are helping entrepreneurs to grow their own businesses. So I've been involved as an expert mentor on so many different initiatives and programs over the last several months. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And that's something that I will probably continue doing moving forward as well.
And what an important role of teaching the lessons you've learned to a new generation of entrepreneurs, so that they can think about some of these things that you've already proven as they're building their companies and be aware of how can we incorporate the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? What makes sense for our company? What would that actually change in how we operate or how we create our business plan? I think that's incredibly important. Now,
Yes,
sorry, go ahead.
I believe so, because back to personal, there has to be a meaning to everything that we do. At least that's what I think. And for me, when I dedicate time to mentor other entrepreneurs at different stages they are at, like I mentor entrepreneurs who are at a very early startup stage, and I mentor executives that are in high growth stage. But the aim is to look for the meaning and taking those actions. And for me, because I personally did not have that support system. When I started as an entrepreneur, I was a student. I had no idea what it's like to start a business and to run a business. I had wild ideas that I want to achieve and I want to realize, but I didn't have the support system. And for me, that stayed with me. The lack of is what made me really want to give the things that I never had. And I think that's why I'm very passionate about doing this. It's not something that I do just because I have a lot of time on my plate. I really don't. It's just I make it a priority because it's important to me personally and because there are so many incredible individuals out there that also need that support, and they also need to learn from someone who have the experience but they don't necessarily know who to turn to. So it's an opportunity for me to give back, and it's also an opportunity for me to be able to teach others very important strategies that I was able to learn and implement because they could be impactful. And the more people can implement those types of strategies to create purpose and profit at the same time, I think the world will be in a better place. So we all have an opportunity to contribute. And I think teaching and mentoring and coaching and advising, those are very critical areas to keep the knowledge moving forward and to keep expanding and increasing the impact that we can create.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, I know we're running towards the end of our time together. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you want to share?
I think one area I'd like to touch on before we finish is something that I wish every company, every organization, every team will consider, which is the importance of creating a diverse executive team and really knowing how to build that culture from the top down. I believe that having a diverse executive team is crucial. It's absolutely important, not only because it facilitates a top down approach that permeates the entire organization and adds value to all aspects of a business, but it also creates an immense ripple effect in society when all people feel represented and included across positions of leadership. So it's very important to build an organizational culture where everyone has equal rights, equal pay, equal opportunities to thrive, to lead, to succeed. And when we have diversity in the workplace, a lot of people still have confusion about what that means. What does it mean to have diversity in the workplace? What it really means is that our companies truly reflect the many facets of the communities we serve, including their age, their race, their ethnicity, religion, gender, social orientation, as well as people with differing cultural references and experiences and educational backgrounds and personality types and even physical abilities. Those are really the areas that I would love to leave our audience with because it's really, really important. Diversity also has a tangible impact on any organization's bottom line. So we need to really take those topics seriously. And that's really what I would love to leave everyone with, because I think there's a lack in those areas. And there's still a lot of companies that are still failing at being truly inclusive and diverse and equitable in so many ways. All that being said, equality, diversity, and inclusion, I believe they're integral parts of moving an entire business forward, if not an entire society. And I also believe, and it's from practice, that the most innovative and profitable companies of the future will be those who foster diversity and inclusion, who maximize the potential of every employee and adapt to the unique needs of their customers, and operate with the full understanding of both the societal and the business value of equality.
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your own journey and experience as a leader to create a diverse executive team. And then openly sharing your story with other entrepreneurs, with on this podcast, with other people you talk to, of the importance diversity, equity, inclusion has, the importance of considering the impact your organization has, the importance of who you're partnering with, and if you're through that partnership, how you're enabling them. Are you enabling them to do things that align with your values, or are you enabling them to do things that don't align with their values? So thank you for the great work that you've done.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It was such a pleasure to be with you on the show.
What a great conversation with Rania. I wanted to take a minute to share 3 of my key takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, an underlying theme throughout this discussion was the importance of training and upskilling. This means investing in individuals. That individual employee investment is also an investment in the future of your organization. But this investment shouldn't be limited to equipping individuals to take on new roles as technology shifts, what skills are required and in demand. It also needs to be extended in ways that will enable your organization to achieve diversity across seniority levels. As the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all ships. But what history has blatantly taught us is that systemic biases are making it so only some ships rise with the tide. To get a different outcome, a different approach is required. Number 2, your values shape your priorities, and your priorities shape your corporate culture. Take a look at your culture. What are the values and priorities that drive it? If you say diversity and inclusion is a core part of your organization, but you don't see diversity and inclusion reflected in the culture and across senior leadership, then it's clearly not a value or a priority. If something truly matters to your senior leaders, they'll prioritize it and figure out a way to make it happen. If it's not reflected in the culture, then it's just lip service. And number 3, have you heard the saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? This communicates how we absorb the norms of those around us. So we should be intentional about who we choose to spend our time with. The same could be said for organizations. Think about the partners up and down your supply chain. Assume that their norms will rub off on your workforce, because they will. Do they meet the standards that you believe in for your company? Are you stronger together, helping each other become more transparent and ethical businesses? Or are you enabling practices to continue that you don't agree with? Complicity means accountability. Who we choose to partner with is a vote for what we approve of. Each of us is accountable for our choices, so make them wisely. Thank you for tuning in to the Purpose and Profit podcast. By giving visibility to these stories, we hope to influence other business leaders to become a force for good. Sometimes the only thing that's needed to create change is showing there's a different and a better way to do things. So in support of that mission, if this episode resonated with you, I ask you to send it to a friend. Bring even more visibility to these leaders that are using business as a force for good. And subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Lastly, this podcast is for you, the listener. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. Or if you have a suggestion on who would be a great guest for the show, let me know. Please send me a note at info@kathyvarol.com. That's info@kathyvarol.com. Until next time.